Hello, beautiful synesthetes, and welcome to another episode of Chromatic Minds. This time we have the wonderful Elias right here. Hello, Elias, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you. Hello, Smada. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm an explorer in West Papua. West Papua is one of the most wild and remote regions of the earth,
Wow.
with many more than 300 indigenous communities living there, and a lot of undiscovered species of animals, very unexplored. So I'm exploring in West Papua. I'm exploring the terra incognita in West Papua. I also own an expedition company there. So we are doing like expeditions into these unknown regions for clients. And we do charity work with our charity West Papua Care, where we help the indigenous people in around the topics medicine and education.
That is fascinating. And what type of synesthesia do you have?
I got a Ideasthesia,
Wow.
so like concepts in my mind trigger a central response, a response from my sensory um, yeah neurology.
Yes,
Um,
I would like to explain also to our viewers that ideasthesia cements the connection between a sensory reaction and a conceptual trigger. This this differs from synesthesia, which connects two senses, like in sense cognition. So, for instance, if I'm thinking of of lemon and I can also taste it in my mouth, that would be, the sound and taste, lexical gustatory synesthesia. Then ideasthesia would be looking at the color yellow and seeing a lemon, if this is how your brain decided that it syncs between two of these things. And this is fascinating because I think the whole purpose of, at the end of the day, of synesthesia is improving our memory, whether it's by tasting people's voices or shapes, whether it's by remembering music, by seeing the colors that it provokes. And for your case, it's ideasthesia. So I think it's like the best way to remember things because your senses are all working together in order to create a visual conception of an idea.
yes, I call that a mind mapping for me. Like, I'm creating visual maps, for example, and like with bridges or like with a kind of transportation modus, right?
Ah, that's
It's kind
beautiful.
of three-dimensional learning space, right? Or space for problem solving, and then like many processes where you need to use your brain and the intellect.
That's
Um,
amazing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like right now it's not exactly clear where does Ideasthesia ends. So, for example, numbers to colors, right, which is quite a common synesthesia that would most likely also go into Ideasthesia because it's also coming from a concept, right, from a
True.
human-made concept. So there's probably a lot of synesthesia, which actually would also go into ideasthesia.
Yes, totally. Grapheme color synesthesia is
Yeah,
is
definitely.
basically what ideasthesia is, but ideasthesia, I think it's the reason that they said, well, you have the grapheme, which is solely for the numbers and colors. The ideasthesia is also for objects like a mug. For instance, for me, when I think of the letter blue, um, the word blue, I see a bee, and the bee would be blue, but I have no idea, but when I think of the color blue, I see a boat, and I see a boat in an ocean, like, maybe like, from a game card. So whenever someone tells me, I like your sweater, I like the color blue on you, I would in my head would see this image popping of a boat in an ocean. But the thing is that the boat is not blue. It's red and white, and there's a white flag, and it's in an ocean. But so whenever someone tells me the word blue, or I think of blue, this is what my brain is like, you need to see that boat. I have no idea why it does that. But that's the way ideasthesia is working, and it makes me think about the ocean, about it being blue. And I think it has a lot to do with a childhood memory that I had, or maybe like a game of cards, that when I would think of blue, I would associate it with this. Can you tell me, when is your earliest memory of having ideasthesia, or trying to understand when did you first discover, like, my brain is,
So
no one
difficult
thinks the way that I
question
think?
somehow. Like, I mean, when I really, I more discovered it because when I realized that others usually don't have it, right?
Yeah.
Because it didn't felt like special for me before that, right? It just felt like a natural thing. So I wasn't aware that it's not like, you know, like I wasn't aware that not everyone has it. So definitely when my first year in school,
Mm.
um, yeah, yeah, I said because I just realized other people don't have it.
How old
I
were you?
know that it was Ideasthesia back then. I just wondered like how does my brain works differently, right? Um, and then like the exact term Ideasthesia or synesthesia, that's actually quite much later. That's like 5 years ago.
Mm.
Because I started to, I really started to research about it. I just wanted to know the difference, and I wanted to know like every detail about it, right?
Yeah.
Before that, I just kind of I used it, of course, but I couldn't really define what it is exactly.
So how old were you when you first thought about, when you first you started using ideasthesia, as of course in school? This is amazing, an amazing tool to use when you have
Yeah, it worked really
synesthesia
well.
of this type.
Yeah, I mean, of course, since I'm a baby, right? But I really saw that in school where it was of a huge help to learn. So I learned much faster because of this visual imagery, right?
Wow, this is amazing.
It's very like
Wouldn't you get
fluid
distracted?
imagery. Yes.
I'm asking if you wouldn't have get distracted with this
Um,
type of synesthesia.
Yes, I got distracted really fast. So it was kind of, and still is, it's kind of, or it's either kind of on or off, right? And when I'm focused, then it's really helpful.
Mm.
Um, when I'm just super distracted, it's more like it's can be quite annoying as well because I just overthink and overperceive, right? And
Yeah,
over associate
overstimulation.
everything. So
The overstimulation, obviously, of the synesthesia. So you would say that when you're focused and relaxed, then this type of synesthesia, this ideasthesia, is really at your benefit. But when you're distracted, then it's just over sensories, and you can get a little bit overwhelmed by that. Because if there's one thing that a lot of synesthetes have pointed out, that having grapheme color synesthesia, or the chromesthesia, especially in a school institute or in a classroom, could be so distracting to them. So every little sound, every letter that they look at, just triggers the color in appearing. But ideasthesia sounds like you probably were very, very creative as a teen, as a child. You probably had amazing ideas that would probably intrigue your teachers rather than, just telling them, I don't like the way you speak because it tastes bad, in my case.
Yeah, no, the teacher in generally have been quite, like, yeah, intrigued. So like in school, people like intelligence, right? Or problem solving. So that wasn't really an issue. Like, what kind of was difficult is just to be, to know, like, I needed to be really patient because when it's kind of, on and I'm in that learning space, like, I'm kind of immersed in it, right? And it's in a perfect setting, it's much faster
Wow.
than like the other children, for example. The other
Amazing.
students. So it was a test of patience for me personally.
Mhm. Of course, also, becoming patient because your brain is probably working much more faster than other people. You just immediately pick up on things and you get the visual concept. And this is amazing. I think especially during this era that we're in, social media era, and where people want ideas and they want them fast. This is something that your brain was practically, had a lot of time in training and performing this way, thinking fast and coming up with ideas and concept fast. That's interesting. I wanted to ask if there's anyone else in your family that might experience ideasthesia or a different form of synesthesia.
I'm not sure actually, because I asked my parents about it, and they basically, I mean, they're almost retired right now, right? So they definitely have something like that around the, kind of special perception. But that was just not a thing with their generation. Like, I think
Exactly.
my grandfather, for example, he created astronomical clocks, right? These clocks where you see the whole, the job
Astrolabs.
with astronomy.
Yeah,
So I think he probably had a time space synesthesia.
that's amazing. Wait, are those
Something
like the
really fit
astronomical?
together, right? But I'm not sure.
Are those the astronomical clocks that you see like in city squares and like main centers, or something that you could put in your pocket like an astrolabe?
Um, Both, but for private people, so that could be like a bigger clock, like 2 meter in height, or
That's
something
fascinating.
smaller, which you can put in the pocket, like handmade astronomical clocks.
Wow, this is fascinating. Oh my God, this sounds like a dream job for a time space, visualization
Yeah,
dynasty.
100%.
This is amazing. This is beautiful. Um, as you said earlier that you're in the West Papua Care and Charity, and defined yourself as an explorer. I assume that you have a strong connection with nature and you are more exposed to nature than, normal people that are living in, urban cities and quite crowded cities. What does it feel like for you to navigate yourself in those places? Because, us in the States, we have a little bit of a problem with orientation, figuring out which way is left, which way is right, because both of our hemispheres seems to be working as one unit. For me as a synesthete, I know that it's always been difficult as I am driving in my car in a city. And I know other synesthetes would describe the same thing. What is it like for you? You said that you're navigating yourself in jungles and trying to reach out to indigenous people of the West Papua. So this is I would like to know more about this.
Yeah, so it's definitely not a disadvantage. And I always have had that connection with nature. I just really love to be in nature, and it's also, it calms me down, right? So my orientation in cities is much worse than it is in nature. Um, so I don't have this like when I'm in nature, it's much easier for me to focus, and there is so much to observe, right? And so many so much information which you can see and perceive, which you can perceive, which helps you with orientation. So I never got lost, or if I got lost, then I always found my way out. Um, but if my Ideasthesia is of help with orientation, I don't think so. It's just kind of that nature is calming me, so it's not, I don't get confused with
This is fascinating
orientation.
because you're right. There is something very calming about being in a surrounding that just have, trees and plants and flowers growing around you. There's something very accurate about the harmony that nature resonates. This is how you cannot compare it into being in a crowded city. In a crowded city, you get distracted by the thing that I would say people put in your face, whether it's a traffic light, whether it's an advertisement that just pops in your face, or is it just people shouting or indulging into a conversation and being loud, and the cars are loud and the trucks are loud, and everything is so loud and everything is so not in harmony. And in nature, it's different. I personally am also feeling connected with nature because I can hear the frequency that plants um, send out. They also have a form of communicating with one another, a tree with a different tree or with a mushroom set, sort of like an internet below them. But it's very peaceful. It's in harmony, and it's something very, they respect. It's like they have respect. It's not this over triggering. So that would be fascinating. I think this is one of the main reasons that I'm scared of going out and navigating in the desert or in a forest, because I'm scared of my disorientation as a synesthete. But now that you're telling me this, then I should be encouraged to do that.
Yes, 100%. I honestly think you'd probably could orientate better than most people, as you also got that, perceptive connection with nature, right? And like, yeah, for me, orientating in cities really is much, much harder because you got like so many people and everyone got their own minds, right? And their own conditioning. And as you said, you got advertisements everywhere. So it's created to distract you, right? It's especially the advertisement. They want you to distract you, to
Yeah.
get you. So yeah, you just need to put a filter on, right? To and yeah, in nature, it's a functioning harmony within itself, right? A harmonic, evolving ecosystem.
Exactly. It
Mm,
seems like we're living in times, and not from I think it's from like the Industrial Revolution when they started, selling things to people. And this is when advertisement became crucial for these companies. I think we're living in times where they want you to be distracted, but then again, in school, in official institutes, they don't want you to be distracted. They're telling you in here you have to be ultra focused. And if you won't be ultra focused, then we'll give you pills for you to be ultra focused, which is another, uh, it's a contribution to another industry that advertises their things.
mm,
But when you go out to the streets, to anywhere, even if you want to disconnect yourself from this modern way of life, you cannot. It's everywhere. The advertisement, the color, the strong colors, the strong use of color, the the uses of basically, capturing your attention in every possible way. So there's this dissonance between what society wants you to have as a like a focus span, and there's things where they also like throwing these distractions at you. I think for us as synesthetes, it's super challenging to take place and participate in an environment like that, but we have no other choice. We were born into this world with this brain. Would you say that with your special type of ideasthesia, have you managed to find other people that share the same, looking at life? Have you found other synesthetes like you that share your ideasthesia throughout your life? Or you always felt like the only people that I can communicate would probably be, your family that have this organization thought in their head?
Well, I personally don't have any synesthete in my friend circle, which I meet regularly personally in Indonesia.
Mm.
It's definitely not a thing here for the local people as well. So like I stimulated like that part of me. I usually stimulate that by reading books or just giving myself, some retreat time. And yeah, and it's funny. Like I also, when I explain synesthesia to someone which doesn't have it, if I explain it super simple, then it's relatable, right? Because everyone has an imagination or has that to an extent, right? But it's not really. I guess it's not really. It's not that an interesting topic to talk about if you don't have it yourself, right? It's just not a.
Depends on the synesthesia, I think. When we talk about ideasthesia, you're right. It's a form that a lot of people can just, focus on something and then become, I don't know, creative about an idea, indulge into, copywriting for a specific idea and developing specific concepts using their imagination. Ideasthesia would be the fact that you are instantly looking at things as a project, even without wanting to focus on a project. But yeah, you're right. With the type of ideasthesia, it's more relatable. And I would say that I wouldn't call it boring, but it's something very relatable to a lot of individuals out there that using their imagination into thinking and visualizing a concept in creating an idea from scratch. It could be for anything. It could be for a book. It could be for a charity. It could be for an event. It could be for an app. But I think there's other forms of synesthesia, like mirror touch synesthesia, lexical gustatory synesthesia, that when you try to explain to people that you feel their pain, or when you try to explain to people that I don't like the shape of your face or your voice because it makes me taste a really bad texture or taste in my mouth. That's when people I like it. Tell me more about what you have. Why don't you like my voice? Why does my voice taste like gravy or stuff like that? So that's the type of synesthesia that I would say that people can't relate to. It's not like I'll tell people, well, your voice is like cotton candy, so I don't need to eat cotton candy. And they'll be like, oh, yeah, I know what you mean. People would not know what I mean if I say this to the majority of society. Well, lexical gustatory and mirror touch synesthesia among the spectrum of synesthetes is considered quite rare, but also ideasthesia. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier, like any other synesthetes, there's this self-exploration that we conduct in order to figuring out that our condition actually has a name, and it's our brain that is unique, and it's not something that just happened to us during our life. It's something that we were born with. So what books inspired you? Which books did you read?
So I did a lot of research online, like scientific research, and I also joined the email list.
Mm.
where people synesthetes exchange about their experience. I didn't read that many books about synesthesia actually. Like the one which I find most interesting for me personally was Born on a Blue Day from Daniel Tammet.
Born on a Blue
Probably
Day.
because you also got Ideasthesia basically, right? Just on a really crazy level, right?
That's amazing. Yes, there's a lot of synesthete authors out there that this is exactly what they do. They inspire other synesthetes. In we probably are the only people in the world that could understand each other better, especially when there's another ideasthesia synesthete out there. Then you could probably relate to his book in the most profound way.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, I could never do what he does in mathematics, right? I'm actually not good at math, but
Wow.
I can totally relate to how he visualizes that. So, like, how does he kind of get to these solutions without even thinking, right? It's basically the solutions is there before he even sees the problem to it, right? So he needs to go back from the solution, he needs to go back to the problem to kind of be able to explain it, right? Instead of usually we have the problem and then we want to find the solution and we got a long process to it. So
Exactly.
yeah, I can definitely relate to that. But yeah, he's a genius in that, right? I'm definitely not. But yeah, that's what it is. Like in the best case, when you really focus, you kind of just see the solution, right? Or see that wishful thing which leads you to it. So you can kind of, shortcut through
Create
the
shortcuts.
intellectual
Exactly.
process because intellect usually it's going step by step, right?
I wanted to mention a book that I read by a person. He's not a synesthete, or at least maybe he doesn't know that he has ideasthesia yet. Um, but there's a book that's called Secrets of a Supermemory, and it's by the author Eran Katz. He's an international memory master, and he brings in his books the most effective, advanced, and he calls it foolproof techniques to boost your memory power. So when people, usually when I encounter people, I bet you get the same thing. When I tell them about synesthesia, other than the part where they ask me, oh, what's the color of my voice and what shape does it have? They usually categorize me as smadar with a good memory, because synesthesia is a tool to enhance your memory. It could be in the form of ideasthesia, in the form of lexical gustatory synesthesia, remembering names by how they taste, or it could be in the form of mirror touch synesthesia and remembering someone's feeling or how they felt and remembering, specific situation that occurred. There's always this thing in our head where we could just, sort of time travel in our head based on these memories, because what makes a good memory linger on with you and truly be printed and engraved in your brain is how it affected you, what impact it had. And the impact would be affected by the senses. So in his book, um, this is something I got this book. It's called The Secrets of a Supermemory. I got this book actually as a gift. I never intended on working on my memory, enhancing my memory, advancing my memory in any way, because it was always something that was like built in for me. I could, having chromesthesia or grapheme synesthesia, like we have when we read something, it's so visualized. We remember it, especially if it also speaks to us. But in his book, I'd like to read from it. I read a little bit from this book, and then I realized, okay, this person has synesthesia, and he has ideasthesia, and he doesn't know it yet. But the way he he helps people. Improving their memory technique is something that a synesthete would totally offer other people to do and see how it works for them. So the main thing is like that he focuses on in his lectures and his book is trying to remember, where did I place my keys? So a lot of people, they walk indoors and they throw their keys away. Some people put it in a bowl, but then when they want to get out and they're like, where did I place my keys, in case they forget? His specific ways of trying to help people mastering this memory technique is very, very synesthete. So he basically says, okay, gives you like the ultimate solution, which is get used to putting it in one place, which is simple. But then he goes on to saying this: you can create an association revolving around the keys. What if the key had a purple energy surrounding it? Try to envision that purple energy around that key, as if the key is
That's
projected.
definitely synesthesia, right?
Exactly. This is exactly ideasthesia. You'd think of a key and you'd see something purple, the same way that I think of blue and I think of a boat. This is he's saying, imagine as if the key has a purple energy coming out of it. That's when you place it somewhere and it'll immediately show up. The purple energy would be apparent. And then he's like, try to get inside the drawer, inside the table where you put it, and imagine that when you throw the key, you would hear a different sound than the key sound. He's like helping people, connecting their senses throughout his technique. But for us as synesthetes, we immediately see it. He probably has synesthesia. So this is why it's easy for him to become, like a master in quick memory and remembering things. This man remembers sequences of numbers in tremendous extents. He can remember. I think he can remember like 300 digits or something like that, like this. And he's probably using a synesthete, some sort of like a synesthete connection. It could be. I think from his case, it might definitely be ideasthesia, because he takes the keys and he turns it into an idea, something that you would visualize differently than you'd think of keys. So I wanted to ask you if this is what you do also in your work, working with people, with indigenous people, trying to bring up a project like you do. Could you probably elaborate a little bit about the project that you conduct, and what's the mastermind that you use in order to initiate these things?
Yeah, so I think I need to explain a little bit about the project first, because it's quite a niche topic, right? West Papua is very unexplored because people don't know about it. So there is a lot of, to do that, like unexplored factor in it. There is a lot of logistical challenges, which you have when you, for example, want to travel to an indigenous tribe, or also when you want to do charity work. It's a lot of logistical things which you need to solve, as there is no infrastructure there, and it's even in the cities it can be really hard to buy things, right? It's not, the cities are notoriously out of stock. Yeah, so that, beside like the natural challenges, that it always is the biggest challenge. And yeah, where it helps is definitely the mind mapping, right? To memorize things. So I just call that, like
It is
everything
amazing.
in my mind visually, right?
It sounds like
So
it's the perfect job for a synesthete, for a synesthete with ideasthesia, focusing on this little logistic things that at the end of the day, this is what counts. If you do the logistic perfectly.
yeah, it's definitely of help, because as you said, we got our memory usually is better, so we can memorize a lot of things using a visual method in my case. And yeah, you also need to be very creative, and be able to improvise in Papua for the expeditions and for the charity, because there is always a problem coming. If you don't have a problem at least once a week,
Wow.
something is wrong. So, yeah, so that kind of creativity which is coming with the Ideasthesia, right? Because it's a kind of constant problem-solving machine that it definitely really helps, because I see solutions, right, which other people probably wouldn't see or wouldn't think about.
You said something really, really, you know, funny, but also crucial. If you don't have problem occurring every once a week, then that's a problem. You should have those
There's
problems.
something strange. I
That
will
is
try.
something I always, I always obviously you were not born in Indonesia, and as a person who is a Westerner, I would say you're from the West. For me, I would feel like, oh, I would be stressed if I had to go into a place where I don't have the right means that I got used to a convenient lifestyle. But for you, it's perfect. Your brain is able to just come up with the means and improvise and new ideas and finding solutions. That's the perfect place. I think places like that and projects like this could really benefit with someone who has ideasthesia. For people who have ideasthesia and probably watching this would watch this podcast, what would how what would you recommend doing in finding their way? What professions you would even recommend them to take, or how to express their creativity?
Well, that's a hard question, Samantha. I think it really depends on what synesthesia you have, right? Some are obvious,
Hmm.
like music, like sound to color, or sound to color and space. Obviously, musician. In general, yeah, like all creative professions definitely have a potential. I think especially like writing or painting, like things, where you need to express yourself, and where it's actually of advantage if you can express yourself in a special way, right?
Yeah,
Because there are like all the like things which you probably would like to discuss with others, but would be looked at as kind of, weird or not relatable. They come great in a book, for example, or in a painting, right?
yeah.
Where you should be where you should create something special, right? But yeah, it really depends. I guess like some synesthetes who work perfectly in something where order is super important. So like, um, like routine, where they just can, do the few things which need to be done perfectly. Um, yeah, I think, yeah, we all are still so individual, right? And every synesthesia is different. In the end, I couldn't say like one profession which just would fit to every synesthete.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It varies. I mean, I know a lot of synesthetes that are famous and we know of. We would find them in art and music, in being, successful at that too. But mirror touch synesthetes usually go on into becoming doctors into medicine. People with ideasthesia like you, they can, visualize concepts. And I want to ask you something that I think would be even maybe a little more difficult question to answer. You said that you are in touch with indigenous people of the West Papua. Could you find that they have like a form of synesthesia too? Would you see that if there's someone who's picking up on your behavior, they start, showing or indicating some form of synesthesia?
That's a super interesting question, because I still ask myself that, right? So But yeah, first, I mean, these indigenous people in Papua, they have been living isolated from the rest of the world until like the 1950s, basically.
Wow.
There was really a trading connection, right? We had the Silk Road, for example, from Asia to Europe and trading to Africa. So we have been connected globally since a long time, and they haven't. So their brain, I think their brain also developed different a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they definitely, like in nature, they have skills which we don't have, and which we could never achieve, or which, you know, we need years to get to that level. Like, just like they can walk through the jungle for hours, for example. And there is like just like some, it looks, for me, it looks exactly the same, like a small stone, for example. And they know that stone, right?
Wow.
So, and they probably put something there even, like, which they might need. So they, yeah, they got a really amazing memory about the jungle, right? They see like things to a really small details in the jungle, and because that's super difficult, right? It's there's so many trees and like hills, so just walking for several hours and find that exact small stone, like kind of the size of a um, of a of a of a head. That's not easy.
No, it's not. But I thought about it, I thought about it like, I think maybe, us as synesthetes, I have interviewed a lot of people, and it would show up in during the next weeks too, as I upload these podcasts. If there's something that a lot of synesthetes would say that they experience, is that trying to calm down the triggers around us and find our own peaceful place, especially for mirror touch synesthetes that might experience pain. And this pain could come from, being a woman around a mirror touch synesthete. They would just feel my monthly pain. So I think maybe, like you said earlier, you said actually being in nature is quite soothing than the chaotic, triggering Western lifestyle. And when I asked this question about indigenous people, it obviously shows that they have an amazing navigational memory and this cognitive behavior that allows them to map a place where I would feel completely like an alien in the jungle. I wouldn't even know how to. You said that if they see a little stone, they remember it. There's even a high chance that they have placed it there. So that is fascinating. And it makes me think, like, what if synesthesia is the way of the brain trying to adapt itself to the modern Western way of life? Because synesthetes, I think that coping with the overwhelming oversensory stimulation of the world would be perfect for living in an urban city, and where you have to, just memorize many, 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 many details. Also, faces. Sometimes we see faces of people. We have to remember their names because we're interacting. I think as synesthetes, the main thing about us is like, it's the interaction that we have with people that makes every person unique. If I can taste your voice, if I can see your voice comes out in a certain pattern, that interaction makes you special for me. It happens with everyone. So I think like synesthetes were perfect to live among society of humans rather than, just also in nature, but also with humans and with animals, obviously, everything that surrounds us. But it seems like the synesthete brain would excel and thrive, I think, maybe in Western society more, because you have much more details to pick up on. If there's something that I always ask synesthetes, and I'm going to ask you now, as we know, synesthesia is either a blessing or a curse. People might think of it. Some people would, at first, people would thought that it was maybe like an eye problem. You know, some people have daltonism, which is being colorblind. So synesthesia is a different form of seeing too many colors, in contrary to someone who's colorblind. So at first, the idea around synesthesia that it was an eye problem or something, that a disorder that people face with. But today we see that this alleged, it's not a disorder. People are quite creative, and they're quite groundbreaking in the way that they think, in what they bring to the world. I've mentioned it before, and I'll say again, Nikola Tesla, Mozart. It's this type of people that had synesthesia that truly changed the face of humanity, whether it's in music, Vasily Kandinsky in art, and of course Nikola Tesla with energy. Would you look at synesthesia as something that is either a curse or a blessing? Would you think that it made you the way that you are, and you are able to use your neurological ability in such a profound, it's a profound way of using it, what you're doing, because you're really helping in better understanding, but exposing us to, like you said, a society, a group of people that were out of contact with the world that we know, and it's just beautiful. Tell me what you think about it, if it's a blessing or a curse.
Yeah, for me, I like it's 100% a blessing in any case. Probably if you're going like to like a mirror pain synesthesia, for example, I think that is, I don't know, right? I don't have it. I think it's not comparable, but I think most synesthesias are a blessing, because they do have it, you can apply them in the real world either, or at least they kind of enhance your personal life experience, right? Which is also a blessing. And yeah, and then there are the downsides with the orientation problems which you mentioned, for example. But for me, it's definitely a blessing, and also like other people, they also got their weaknesses, right? So that is just part of life, that you kind of are born with a set of weaknesses and strengths, right? So I definitely, I think my life would feel super boring if I just suddenly don't have it at all, right?
Yeah,
I would feel numb,
life would
probably.
definitely be less vivid, less exciting. In your case, I think you're doing something remarkable with the type of synesthesia that you have. I also wanted to ask you, synesthesia is always awake. It's not something, when we have to imagine something, any human that has to imagine, obviously us too. This is a process that we do, that we ask our brain to do. Let's imagine something. Let's imagine this scenario. For us as synesthetes, the imagination part is something that we would have triggers, and our brain force us to see these things, to taste, to visualize. This is something that we also encounter when we go to sleep. How is your ideasthesia is translated while sleeping? Because I wonder what's it like to be asleep and have ideasthesia, when you'll just see, in my case, I'll see something blue and I'll think of a boat while dreaming, or being in a conscious stage where you're not awake and you're not fully asleep. That would trigger, I would think, during sleeping, that would trigger visions and exciting dreams. All of a sudden, I'm seeing blue, I'm thinking about a boat, and I might be in a boat, while I'm dreaming, which is something that I wouldn't do as I'm awake. I'll just see the boat and I'll ignore it. How do you experience your sleep cycle?
Yeah, well, so first, I'm not really fond of sleeping because I usually got difficulties starting to sleep.
Mm.
My mind is just running unless like I'm super exhausted physically, like, full day in nature. And when I'm sleeping, my dreams very often are quite like psychedelic, right? So it's quite abstract. I'm fascinated by them actually sometimes, and sometimes I'm just like, what was that somehow?
Yeah,
Because
that's
maybe
beautiful.
because I'm in these visual concepts, right?
Yeah.
And in dreams that probably that would translate to dream within an abstract concept. I don't know. That's a theory which I can just come up with. But yeah, definitely very visual and very abstract and psychedelic. Yeah.
This is beautiful. You said psychedelic, and I can totally relate. My dreams, I don't feel like I'm ever falling asleep. I know I'm asleep. Yeah, I'm not moving, but my brain is always awake. I know there's a research. I could also add the link if people would want to read about it on my page on Facebook called Chromatic Minds. So there's a research performed on a huge group, a large group of synesthetes, and they wanted to see if how do they experience their dreaming, sleeping and dreaming cycle. And that research showed that 80% of synesthetes reported that they had lucid dreams, and achieving a lucid dream state is not something that is normal. But for us as synesthete, we have the tendency to experience that every time we go to sleep. At the end of the day, it would mean that our consciousness is still awake, getting signals and getting triggered by something that's surrounding us. So, like you said, having ideasthesia and trying to fall asleep with that specific state would probably induce uh, psychedelic geometric or abstract shapes, which I also see when I try to fall asleep. It's like I'm falling asleep and there's a tunnel of shapes and letters and things flowing, things, vibrations and frequencies that I see floating into my eye. Obviously, in pitch dark, I never see pitch dark. It's like everything comes to life in pitch.
Yeah, that's same with me. Yeah.
Yeah. And as a synesthete, this is something we need to get used to. Our body is sleeping, but our brain is still, I don't know if I could say this, but our brain would still be synesthesing while
Yeah,
we're sleeping too.
definitely. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's a thing because um, having this word that people might find intimidating while using it because of bad reputation of what happened in the 60s and 70s. But a psychedelic experience is not something that has to do with consuming psychedelic hallucinogen. For a synesthete, a normal synesthete that had never had uh, the normal psychedelic episode or interaction. This is our life. Our life basically is one psychedelic journey, because when people do consume psychedelics that has hallucinogens using, I don't know, mushrooms or DMT, ayahuasca that people might be using, that's when they start seeing the world as synesthetes. And there's a wonderful show on Netflix that's called How to Change Your Mind, that is focusing on microdosing and shrooms. And you would see people that this treatment had helped them tremendously with coping with life, reorganization of their brain. And they would all of a sudden start living as synesthetes. They say like, oh, you're talking to me and I see color. What a beautiful vision is that? I can taste your voice and it tastes amazing. Or some people would say, I can taste your voice, it tastes horrible. But this gives them some sort of proper organization to the way that their brain is connecting all the senses and the dots. And people need to understand that when we use the term or when neurology and psychology uses the term as people that are living as if they're in one huge psychedelic episode, which is their entire life, it's not something that this word should not be intimidating, because this is how we see our life. We're not supposed to talk to people, and our mind is just, Lucy in the skies with diamonds going about around at the background. And as we talk to them, we also focus on what they're saying and we sort of, put the triggers aside. But this helps us remember the conversation better. This helps us come up with better ideas. This helps our memory become, like superhuman or something like that. So yeah, not having proper sleep is a is a price to pay, but I think it's a normal price.
It's a cheap price to pay, isn't it? It's
It's a
not
price to
expensive
pay. It's a price.
compared to the
A,
benefit.
a lot of people have used that price to pay in a way of becoming productive also during dreams. Do you often find yourself going to sleep thinking of a project, constructing it while you're sleeping and waking up and writing it down?
Yeah, I never did that, but I often think about it actually, because I'm sure it would work to just, yeah, to basically learn while you, or plan and memorize while you're sleeping, because your brain somehow does that anyway, right? It puts everything like in order and digests stuff, your daily experiences. I just kind of, I never really went into that specifically, because it's kind of, yeah, it kind of felt scary to me a bit to, start to control that. But I'm sure it's possible, and it could lead to great results if you really achieve that.
Try to do it next time. I don't think.
Yeah, on the other side, I think like our natural system, the way how we are naturally should already be fine, right?
Yes.
So yeah, shouldn't need that much changes.
Yeah, definitely this is something you can try to do next time. I'm gonna ask you something. I think we briefed a little bit about it, but also what's the perfect synesthete world? How do you envision it if everyone were synesthetes?
Yeah, how would that look like? Definitely much more elegant and aesthetic, because we usually are visual people, right? So we would have much more beautiful and much more colorful cities, and more harmonic, because we are overstimulated fast, right? So we tend to be quite harmony surging people, I
Yeah.
think. So it'd be more harmonic and more peaceful, much more innovative, obviously. Um, yeah, I think that's what it would look like. Yeah, more. Yeah, yeah. These things would be the main changes.
Less
Probably.
less
Yeah, I
triggering,
also
I
thought
think.
about the empathic part. Would we be nicer to each other as a global society? Are like synesthetes better people? Probably. Like people which got a mirror synesthesia, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Mirror
I don't
synesthetes,
say that because
definitely.
like there are many non-synesthetes which also are amazing people, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, the harmony thing and the creativity, like that would definitely make much more beautiful cities, and which are much nicer to live within.
That's wonderful. Exactly. You said quite accurately, a harmony, not having too many distractions around us, or organizing these distractions in a harmonized way, which is something that I think any synesthete, that's a daily struggle. Trying to the search for harmony and achieving harmony. It could be in our brain, in our homes, in our surrounding, the people that we interact with. I think it just has an effect on every plateau in our life. Yeah. What would you recommend other synesthetes, especially synesthetes with ideasthesia? which books to read, other than, of course, seeing this podcast and hearing what you have to say. Do you think that it's crucial that us synesthetes would interact with each other, communicate, share ideas, because we're obviously the only people on this planet that could fully understand each other, and grow together? So I know you had quite a journey in your self-exploration, but what would you recommend synesthetes that just now discover their synesthesia, and especially ideasthesia?
Yeah, like I'd definitely really look to, to exchange or to read about experience stories from other synesthetes, like which I did also, in that email list, because beside, like, science, it's also like quite a dry topic, right? It's, that what it is now, but that was much more amazing for me, just to see like other people, other synesthetes, or people with Ideasthesia about that much more, or use it in a like way which I would never imagine even. And there's a lot of there will be a lot of experiences which you can relate to suddenly, because I think that is kind of, I sometimes have difficulties just to relate to, like, neurotypical people. I just don't understand how they are thinking, right? So
Exactly.
to translate that to me first. Yeah, experience stories and books. I said I didn't read that many books. I think Born on a Blue Day is from Daniel Tammet definitely is a great book for people with Ideasthesia, because he got that and he explains it really well, and it's very relatable. And yeah, fascinating as well, because he doesn't see, within his visual process, he doesn't see numbers, he sees something abstract. So if he would explain what he sees, we wouldn't think of a number. So he's thinking in his own language, which is much more effective than the common rules of math. Yeah, I think that's it. I wouldn't know what other. Yeah. Yeah, just
Wonderful.
enjoy it, enjoy the journey, right?
Exactly. Enjoy the journey, enjoy your synesthesia, give into it. Don't try to suppress it. I think when we try to suppress, and people uh, would 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 not enjoy this experience, in the maximal way, especially people, I think, with mirror touch synesthesia, when they can feel pain, or those with the lexical gustatory synesthesia, where they can taste sometimes things that are not nice. They still need to give into that experience and try to feel pain to the fullest and see where it comes from, because this is the only way that you could find what gives you peace. In my case, I have strong chromesthesia. If I would say, oh, I don't want to listen to music because it triggers so many colors and visions in my eyesight, then I would miss out on the wonderful world of musical, musical, intellectual. I play many, many, many instruments thanks to that. It does take my, me being persistence and wanting to learn more about music, and me wanting to take instruments that I've never played before and wanting to learn how to play them, so I know exactly how to create those sounds and visions that I see when I hear music or when I hear a frequency. It is something that takes a lot of dedication and devotion to do, but if you really put an effort and let yourself just feel it and be, play with it. This is something that the wonderful Sean Day is saying all the time: play with synesthesia. Don't be intimidated by that. I think a lot of people that have synesthesia might be intimidated by that, but those who are not afraid, those who are courageous enough, they go onto this self-exploration journey and they realize, oh, this thing has a name. We have a different brain. Our brain is just thinking differently. And then they start to realize their how to develop their skills, how to properly use synesthesia in a way that it would benefit with you, and in your case, benefiting with society. I think the people of West Papua are really privileged to have you assisting them, aiding them with not only your giving ability, and this is something that comes from your soul, but also this beautiful brain that you were privileged, to be born with, and contributing to the people of West Papua, Elias. So this had been another episode of Chromatic Mind. I had the pleasure of having you here, hearing a little bit about your charity and what you do in West Papua. If anyone wants to travel to West Papua or support, the indigenous tribe of Papua, you are more than welcome to contact our lovely Elias here.
Yes, I'm happy for any interest in the helping the indigenous communities of West Papua, because they don't get any help, unfortunately. It's an unknown it's unfortunately unknown that they are slowly going extinct, and we want to look we can change. So they are grateful for any help, and we are. And yeah, if you want to explore Papua together with me and my team, if you want to explore the terra incognito, please feel free to contact me.
Amazing again.
Thanks, Mother, for the very interesting discussion together.
Thank you. Such an amazing, intriguing individual. What a beautiful cause, what a beautiful project you're working on, and I really do hope that people would contribute to that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Elias. Until next time, this was Chromatic Minds. Bye-bye. That you are